Good morning, and welcome to the Alabama Real Estate Commission's presentation of the Land Brokers Forum. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. You're probably muted by design. If you have a question or would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. At that point, you'll be acknowledged, and we'll go ahead and have your field your question. The Alabama Real Estate Commission licenses about 40,000 licenses per year. So we issue just over 40,000. And within that, we have residential practitioners, commercial practitioners, property managers, but there's also another subcategory of practitioners that we're going to talk about this morning, and that is our land brokers. So I'm joined by an esteemed panel this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about land brokerage. We're going to talk about transactions and some of the nuances that are currently occurring out there in transacting real estate. So with that, I'll let everyone introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it. Hoke, if you would start us off.
My name's Hoke Smith. I am from Montgomery, Alabama, and the broker for Saunders Land. I've been in the business about 10 years now, and mainly focus on, or do strictly focus on land transactions, whether it's recreational, timberland, and mixed farmland properties.
Okay.
Yep, I'm Jonathan Good. I'm the responsible broker for Farm and Forest Brokers. I'm over in Perry County. I've been a licensed broker for 18 years. I host a weekly radio show and podcast called The Land Show. We've been doing that for 10 years, and have the accredited land consultant designation, which we're going to talk about a little later through the Realtors Land Institute. So it's a pleasure to be with y'all today.
Thanks for joining us. Ma'am?
And I'm Kim Bearlayer, and I'm one of the 9 commissioners here with the state, and I am representing District 4. And primarily, I am here to learn from this esteemed panel because I'm one of those he just mentioned who is primarily a residential real estate agent, but we do get questions about land all the time, and I think it's extremely important based on some prior conversations of what agents need to be aware of and where they can go to get help when they need it with involving land. So thank you. Thank y'all for letting me be here.
Good. I'm Dale Walker, Mossy Oak Properties. I own the franchise for most of the state of Alabama. We from about Birmingham to the coast. I've been in the business since 1980, so 40 something years, 45 years, I guess. We deal in really anything that's not residential. We will do some commercial. We've got some experience with commercial, but primarily rural properties. Both of y'all talk more about land. We actually do rural properties. It might be bed and breakfasts or Airbnbs or venues and that kind of thing. So we'll do a little bit broader range. So I consider myself to be kind of a rural and not just land. These guys are legends in their field, so listen to what they have to say.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm Chris Pringle, and I went to work for Southern Timberlands in 1994, broker in timberland. Now I build hunting camps more than I sell land. I found this little niche. People needed hunting camps built, and they started hiring me. But I spent a long time in the woods selling land. Learned a lot from Mike Dees and Charlie Balcom, but I've enjoyed it.
Okay. Thank you all again for joining us. This is really an educational opportunity for the entire state. Again, we have over 40,000 licenses issued, and folks are practicing different based on their region. And what we're seeing is a rise and increase in combination transactions. So a house with land or property where folks want to make a homestead and build. But we're finding that a lot of our licensees are just not really educated on managing land, valuating timber, assessing the true value, and really how they can disperse of land. So we want to talk about that this morning in a very informational way, very informal, by the way. So if we could, let's start a conversation about land brokers. What is land brokering? In your words, in your own opinions?
No, I mean, it's just, as we talked about earlier, land brokerage is about helping people buy and sell land. The land has always been there. The land will always be there. It's about helping it transition. So Hoke and I mentioned earlier, about 2/3 of our business is estate transition. So when somebody passes away, the next generation generally inherits it. And so invariably there are 2 or 3 family members. One wants to keep it, one wants to sell it at any price, one's kind of the swing vote. And I tell people I can't get my family to agree on what we're going to eat for supper, let alone selling the property. So that's what we do. We come in and help people understand the value of their asset. And then if it's the right thing for them to sell it on the open market, we do that. We help people do that. But it's really land when everybody has a house or needs a home to live in. And a lot of times that is the largest single asset that family unit ever owns. When we're selling a piece of land for someone, oftentimes that's the largest single asset in the history of that family. So not just that family unit, but the family at large. So when we're helping them broker that transaction, it's a significant milestone. We play a very small part in that, but that is a major chapter in a lot of people's lives. So it's a big responsibility what we do with land brokerage.
Oh,
Yeah, and he covered it pretty well, but just to add to it, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that people are interested in land, a lot of different reasons that, people want to sell land, and like he said, estate properties are a large part of that. As far as interest in land, though, we deal a lot with recreational properties. Dale mentioned rural properties. As we've seen over the last few years, COVID has kind of gotten people in touch with their outdoorsiness, get in touch with the land. So anyways, we have the knowledge and have kind of gone through our careers in understanding the land, different parts of it. And we're just here to help people find what they're looking for and the right place, making good decisions and doing it through that process.
okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think they pretty much covered it. We will cover kind of everything that's not commercial or kind of in a subdivision residential. And so it gets to be a really broad spectrum of things that we deal with on a daily basis. And it's very little regiment to it. Most of the time there's something odd, there's something unique, there's something that has got to be discovered or it's got to be cured to make the deal work. And so it is a little different what we do in the land brokerage, as you describe it, and rural brokerage, as I describe it, that makes it a little more challenging. It requires a great deal more knowledge and experience in a really broad range of things. It requires a great team that you have around you from a standpoint of the engineers, the attorneys, and all of the people that are going to touch that process to get it from, because a lot of times our most of our work is done after the contract is signed, getting it to the closing. Because most of the time there's going to be something unique, different, that's got to be taken care of, and that team of people that you got around you is very important.
And I would say land is probably a very broad category.
Sure.
As in differences in residential and commercial, we have things, what we call, like I said, recreational property, timberland, small acreage estate properties where people want to do home sites, but transitional land, land that's on the outskirts of town that is looking to be potentially developed.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of different types of land, and all those different types of land, you need to have a knowledge basis about those and what makes them valuable and, why people would be interested in them.
Okay. Chris, want to add anything?
I mean, they're all correct. You have to have a very broad knowledge of soil. Some soil you can't build on. What that soil can do, what it can grow, the different types of trees. You have to understand inheritance. You have to understand the real estate law. You have to understand surveys. It's just a broad knowledge base you have to acquire in order to be an effective broker of timberland. It's not the same as selling a house. One little plot and, you can get an inspector, pay him $200 and he can come look at the house. You have to be able to go out there and look at it and tell these people what they're looking at, or you need to know what they're looking at.
Wow. So we talk a lot about what the process is. If you all could, for the edification of our licensees that are watching that don't know, what does a land transaction look like? I mean, from start to finish, and I know there's some nuances between residential, commercial, but what's a land deal look like? I'm driving down the street, I see a piece of property that I want, I call one of you guys. What's next?
I would say that a land transaction probably starts way before that. As far as brokers and agents, understanding the piece of property we're fixing to deal with, how it's laid out, whether it's property lines, what it's made up of, timber, pasture land, what kind of utilities are accessible to it, location and potential problems that you may see that preferably handle up front on the front end rather than trying to do it throughout the transaction. So that's a lot of what we do is, assess a property, is try to identify the pros, obviously, but also the cons that property may have and address those before we even get started with it.
When you say cons or problems, could you give us some examples?
Yeah, there's situations where, properties may have, the neighbor might have moved a home and it sits on the property line, or, access issues where, Joe has 40 acres behind this property and he has, the rights to go through the property. You have to, figure out if that is a legal easement, if there's another way for him to access that, whatever that may be. But that's something you need to address because that will come up throughout the transaction process. And unfortunately, a lot of times deters people from properties. Like I said, land lines or property lines not being as a parcel line may show it on the internet. I don't know what some of the other stuff we see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think access is a big one. People want to know if there are utilities. We want to make sure that title has been searched many times before we're selling a property, just to make sure. The worst thing that can happen, like Dale mentioned, we earn our paychecks after the contract is signed. One of the worst things that can happen is the problems pop up after.
Title work.
When everybody's signing the contract, there's generally a lot of goodwill. That goodwill starts eroding day one. The more problems that come up after the contract is signed, and then the buyer assumes that the seller's trying to get over on them, and that happens in residential real estate. Not trying to diminish that at all. It's just different because these are things that have happened in the history of the property a lot of times, and you're trying to fix what happened in the past, either on paper in the courthouse or on the ground if there's an encroachment or something like that. And we're dealing with pine beetles and leaky ponds, and I mean there's just a plethora of issues that can pop up.
And actually, the process actually starts back at the listing side. I don't know about Hoke and Jonathan, but 70% of our listings we sell. And so we're on both sides on that. And so the listing is when you try to get as much of your discovery done as you can. We even most of the time go ahead and run title work because that a lot of times it's heir property. It is maybe changed from one family member to another. It's been in the family. Most of the time, probably land has been in this person's chain of title longer than residential houses have that turn over more frequently. And so we really want to see what happened back in 1950, 1960, that maybe there was an easement on there. Maybe there's an easement that goes through this that we didn't know about. And so maybe there's a break in the title. And if there's a break in the title, then we need to be working on that before we even get the contract. And so the first thing is the listing side and doing all of the discovery items that they've talked about as it relates to getting the property ready to sell so we can sell, so we know what we're selling and we have confidence that we can sell the title. The next thing is, you know, probably 50% of our sales have got something on it, not just land. It's gonna have ponds, it's gonna have a barn, it's gonna have a house, it's gonna have a second house that's used as a rental or caretaker or whatever. And so one of the things is trying to figure out the valuation. How do you, if you go into Wind Lakes, you can tell real quick what the price is. When you go into a piece of property, every single piece of property is unique. The property on this side of the street is different from the property across the street. It's going to have different acres. It's going to have different things on it. It's going to have different contours. And so the first thing that we have to do, if we're not going to have an appraisal done, is we got to determine what's the value of this. And we always look at it as if we're an appraiser and how an appraiser would look at it. And that is that he's going to compartmentalize the different items that have value. If it's a house, I've got one right now. It's 4,300 square foot house. It's got a second 1,500 square foot cabin. It's got a 6-acre lake. It's got a 2-acre pond. It's got some in floodplain. It's got some at high, got some with road frontage. And so we have to take that and take all the information and get it down into a spreadsheet that we say, this house is worth $125 a foot. This one's not worth but $50 a foot. The barn is worth, $50,000. The floodland is worth $4,300, but the highland is worth $8,000. And so it's got to creep. And you take all those component pieces and you put it together and you say, this is what we think an appraiser would appraise this for. Not what I think, but what I think an appraiser would think he would appraise it for, just based off of other appraisals that we've seen. And so that's the first thing, is determining the value. The next thing is, how are we going to market this? If it's 300 acres, can we divide it? Does it have 2 roads? Does it have a lot of road frontage? Is the buyer receptive to dividing it to raise the value of it? Because typically the smaller the acreage, in some cases, the higher the per acre is going to be. And there are more people in the pyramid that can afford a 100 acres rather than a 300 acres. And so how are we going to market it? And then, the next thing is, where is our market that we're going to reach out to? Now we've gotten to where you are. Somebody comes by and says, I want to buy it.
Oh, wow.
Now the next process starts of engaging him and informing him of the same thing. We share the same information. This is how we think an appraiser would appraise it. And to establish some value, because in his mind, he's really confused. I got a house here, I got a house there, I got a pond there, I got floodplain, I got highland. What is the value? Because every piece of property is unique. And so you just got to take comparisons. And then we get to the contract. And I'll stop there because I'm taking up too much time. But now you get to the contract, now we got a whole nother thing.
And negotiations.
Well, you get to the negotiations, and then you got to go from the contract now to get to the close.
I got a story that encapsulates some of the problems, if we got just a minute.
Absolutely.
Hoke has heard this ad nauseum, but it's just really unique. It sums up what we were talking about. And somebody told me once, land never has a problem. Only the person that owns it has a problem. And I think that's true. But so a few years ago, it's been 10 years ago now, I think the statute of limitations is out. But a gentleman called me and he said, I would like for you to help me sell my property. One of my friends was a broker with another company, and they were going to put this 150-acre property on the market. This man called me and said, I'm the illegitimate son of the man that owned the property. My father passed away, and I would like you to help me to represent the sale of my property. And my friend, who was the other broker, was representing the legitimate son. The legitimate son contested this man's ownership. They petitioned the courts, they exhumed the body, they did a DNA test to prove paternity, and my client was in fact the illegitimate son. So he had a half interest in this property. So I'm representing one man, my friend is representing the other. We worked through all of that. We put the property under contract. During the term of the contract, it's found that there's an encroachment by one of the neighbors. We had to move a fence line, get that sorted out. One of the parties in the transaction had a mental disability and was receiving disability payments for his mental issues. So we had to get 3 doctors to examine him to prove that he was competent enough to sign a deed, but not so competent that he would lose his disability benefits permanently. And so we did all of this. It took us about 14 months to get this sorted out. We made about $2,500 a piece on the sale of this property. But we have a good story to tell other agents because things come up. You know, it involved title issues, it involved encroachments, it involves so many different things, and it's just different. It's not better or worse or anything than selling residential commercial. It's just a different field of practice. And so you just have to know about your product is really what it is.
Wow.
I think that story just won an award.
Well, when you ask about problems, that is a problem.
But that's a reality that could
Yeah,
occur.
it's-
Sure. Well, it did occur.
You know, when I first go look at a piece of property, I want to, talk to the owner and see if they actually have clear title, if they know they have clear title. But I also want to see if the property is clearly defined. If you could spot one of these encroachments before you go out there, and just lay it out on topo maps and see if I know where the property is and if everybody kind of agrees at the corners. But also your access. Is it a deeded easement or is it prescriptive easement? If it's a deeded, you can run water and power back to it. If it's prescriptive, you can go get your timber, you can go back and hunt. You can't necessarily take utilities back to it. And how wide is your easement? And I had a guy argue with me, just yelled at me about, I've got access, I've got access. He was trying to sell this piece of property for development purposes. And he was just telling me, I've got access, court said I have access. And I started laughing. I said, I know, I read your court case. What the court said was you had the right to use the existing dirt road. Didn't say you had the right to improve it. It didn't say how wide it was. And it runs right between the adjacent landowner's barn. I said, how are you going to build a road and take utilities back there if you don't know how wide your road is? I mean, to build a road, you need 50 feet. Everybody goes, well, 30 feet. I said, 30 feet's for a power line. If you take a 30-foot access easement and put power lines down the middle, you're gonna have a terrible time trying to get an 18-wheeler running to bring in your material to build. So, I look at it as what kind of access do you have? What kind of, property demarcation do you have? Are there utilities in there? I've had several people buy property and call me in to build their camp. And I'm like, well, once you get 2.5 miles of power lines run back here, we can start building. I mean, I've built in the woods with no power, no water. That's what the guy wanted. He wanted to go solar, but most people want to have electricity back there. And you don't think about it, but 2.5 miles at, what was it, $3, $4 a linear foot now?
Yeah, if not more now.
Yeah, it gets kind of expensive.
Wow.
And not only the access, it's not just the access, the deeded access.
Yeah.
But it's got to have utilities attached to it, access and utilities. I had 113 acres in Elmore County, and he had deeded access from 50 years ago. It was deeded, but it did not say access and utilities. And it was a mile back there, and I tried to sell it for a year before finally a guy would buy it without the utilities. But nobody would touch it. I showed it, but without the utilities, they couldn't build anything back there.
Oh, wow. Do we have any questions out there? We've talked a lot.
We do. We have a question from Mr.
Jerry Joe?
Joe. Mhm.
Good morning. Great
Good morning.
topics. Dale had some very good points when we list a property to do due diligence before the property goes on the market to find things. But I tell you one thing that the world we live in the land brokerage business, we really live in an era almost of the 1940s. If you have to go back and look at Alabama's landscape in the 1940s, it was very rural. and most of the people in Alabama lived on farms. They didn't live in cities. And a lot of people that own land, they just drove to get to their land. They drove across other neighbors, and nobody really thought any different of it. And today, as these properties get broken up, especially if you're into rural counties, say Choctaw County, Marengo County, where these properties have stayed in the same ownership for a long time, there may not be easements to these properties. There could be old boundary line disputes. I don't know how many times I've conquered old boundary line disputes. The power of maps is probably one thing that is overlooked the most in the land brokerage business. I have solved more problems using maps in my business. For example, of course, if you on different GIS maps, there's all kind of available stuff. But one thing I have found and have used time and times again, University of Alabama, they have a catalog of old aerials. They go back to the 1940s, and I have used those maps. I can take one of those maps there and bring it into my ArcGIS mapping program and geo-reference that map, and it'll be an old black and white aerial, but they're very clear, and they show property lines. They show where old roads used to be. You got some fine land brokers sitting at that table. And how many times have you gotten a call from somebody that has inherited a piece of land? They want to sell it. They didn't know how to get to it. They don't even know where it is, and a lot of times if, by the use of maps and looking at old roads, old usage, you can figure out how people access, because accesses can be in these real rural counties that have, the land has not been divided. It's pretty much in its original footprint that it was. That's when you run into access problems. It's probably one of the biggest things I run into, because the one thing I've heard everybody say around this table is surprise. Nobody wants a surprise at closing. We can handle the surprise before closing, but not at closing. And so learning how to use maps to minimize these issues, property line access, all that, I think is huge. And using attorneys that are, not just transactional real estate closing attorneys, but use an attorney. If you're in Choctaw County, Alabama, you want to use a local attorney that understands, how things work in that county. Matter of fact, he'll probably know some of the family members, that even own the property. So using local, good real estate attorneys, I think is imperative too. I didn't mean to take up that much time, but maps is important.
Mr. Jerry Joe, if you could please tell people the company that you represent.
I'm with National Land Realty. I've probably been in the real estate business since about 20 years. I used to farm, and Hurricane Ivan came along and put me out of the pecan business, and so I had to find out a new way to make a living. So I've been in the land brokerage business since.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll say this about Jerry Joe. He's been practicing a long time, and gosh, it was probably 15 years ago we were talking about maps. We used to have to go to properties with paper maps and stuff like that. And I was with Jerry Joe. He had a laptop at the time that had a satellite hookup on it, which back then was, I don't know, it probably cost as much as sending somebody to the moon. But I just thought Jerry Joe was, the cat's meow. We're riding around, he's mapping timber stands, and it's just really impressive to see. So Jerry Joe knows what he's talking about. And I would also just comment on the local closing attorneys. There are two kinds of closing attorneys, and this is a generalization. They're the kinds that can find problems, and then there are the kinds that can find them and fix them. And you want the second one. The first one will mess up your deal. The second one will save your deal. And so that's when you're operating in a local rural community, find the one that can find the problems and fix them, not just the one that can find the problems for you.
And I think we have another question too
do.
from Fletcher Majors.
You got some real good information from a lot of people that know what they're talking about, and you can see it's a real complex thing. One thing I would say is, as long as you've been in this business, you still need to know the good professional people that can solve problems, the legal attorneys, just like Jonathan said. You got to find the one that doesn't just see the problem, but sees a solution for it. But you also need to find surveyors, people that can clear out roads, you need to, and the mapping that Jerry was talking about. I mean, I remember riding around with Jerry and his satellite stuff too, and he was one of the first ones there doing that. But you need a good feel of what you know, and when you know it's time to go get somebody to help you. And you got to guide these buyers and sellers. You know, we're talking about sellers primarily because as y'all said, the listing, you get that listing down right and look at the title, look at the maps, try to see the problems. And that's a big part of the battle. But then when something else comes up and maybe you're representing the buyer and he needs some legal advice that you're not qualified to give him. So you got to make sure you know when to take those people to the right person and have a team of people that you use. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I would love to find a new surveyor. I can't find one that'll blaze a line anymore.
Mhm.
They'll go set a corner, but I can't find one that wants to cut a line and mark it anymore. As far as, and I thought about this, you know, your access on your roads, you need to find somebody who knows how to actually build a dirt road.
Mm.
It's not as easy as people think it is. I've
Yeah.
seen bulldozers go through just right up a hill, flat, no turnouts, no water breaks. I'm like, that's not gonna last 6 months.
No,
Mhm.
not at all.
But you know,
Wash
people
out.
pay all this money and just get taken advantage of.
I'll say to kind of summarize kind of what we've been talking about, the listing process and identifying problems is once you get to the stage where you are ready to market and get a contract on it, doing all this preparation just makes for a smooth, clean, you know, transition into the owner's hands. And so anyways, the preparation for listing is probably one of the bigger things.
Yeah, particularly if you had a piece of property that's been sitting there for 40 years, nobody's used, they inherited it, and all of a sudden you're like, well, you're gonna have to spend some money because we gotta be able to get on the property. You're gonna have to open these roads up. And I don't want to spend money.
I just want to say our last person that asked the question, Fletcher Majors, is probably one of the best land brokers in the United States. He's been the land realtor of America before. Hoke and I definitely stand on his shoulders with
OG.
things. I mean, I've learned more from Fletcher than anybody that I've never actually directly worked under, but he's the broker at Great Southern Land. He was also an attorney for many years. He doesn't practice anymore, but I would just encourage any of our viewers, if you have a land specific question, he's not going to give you legal advice, but I guarantee you Fletcher's been through it. And
He's a great guy.
he's a fine man, and he has taught the educational courses. And Fletcher and I helped write Land 101 for the Realtors Land Institute, or rewrite it a few years ago. And he's as good as anybody in the country. So if you have a question, reach out to Fletcher. And he's on the bill reading committee for the Real Estate Commission
Okay.
currently. So he looks at things through a land broker's eyes, and we certainly appreciate Fletcher.
Okay.
He brought up something really important, and you just did again, that I wanted to ask about. And Hoke, I had asked you beforehand if you would talk to us about the classes and how someone can become more knowledgeable about a land brokerage.
Yeah, so I myself this year am president of the Realtor Land Institute chapter of Alabama. Jonathan has been very involved with it all these years. Dale has been involved as well. Fletcher, as we just heard from, helped create a lot of the education that Realtor Land Institute provides. So many of us land brokers in the state of Alabama. It's been a great networking opportunity for us. We all may be in North Alabama and one may be in South Alabama, but through this networking and education process, we've all gotten to know each other. And it's with the education, Realtor Land Institute, the RLI for short, provides or has a designation, the accredited land consultant, which you can achieve, which is similar to a CCIM for commercial brokers. And to get that designation, there's a process of education courses you need to complete. And there's some other criteria as well, but our Alabama chapter and other states have chapters as well. Typically, we'll have a couple courses throughout the year that are continuing education courses that we get approved through the Alabama Real Estate Commission to get CE credits for your real estate license. And we have different topics, whether it's timberland. Jonathan talked about Land 101. That's probably the open introduction to the land industry in real estate. Fletcher created land investment analysis, which is, as we talked about with valuing land, ways to value it. There's so many other, there's recreational land courses, farm and agriculture courses, transitional land, subdivision development land. So, as we spoke about, land's a broad term. There's so many different categories. Realtor Land Institute has tried to create classes to shed light and education on each of those, different fields there. Next week, we're hosting in North Alabama a transitional lands course. It's a 2-day event. It'll be pretty intense and pretty in-depth, but at the end of it, you'll come out understanding what transitional land is. Is it just a pasture land tract out in rural Alabama, or is it potential for, development purposes? And along with that, you'll end up with 16 CE credit hours.
Wow.
So you'll get it, one course can knock you, it's 2 days long, which deserves, a lot of CE credits, more than your traditional, 3-hour course that lasts just a half a day. But you'll come out very knowledgeable. And again, through this process, take all the courses and achieve the ALC, which is the accredited land consultant.
Is that class available to any realtor?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So I've never seen any advertisement for that. Is it?
Yeah. Well, that's probably on our fault. The state chapter is getting the word out there, but
Because what I'm thinking is, that, whenever got started in real estate, I see a lot of people coming out, they want to sell houses, but they might somewhat be interested in land. But they don't necessarily they don't have the time to make the investment of that. Go take a class or two to get a basic understanding, because if you're taking CE in real estate, basically all you're getting, most of it is FHA, VA loans for houses. But I think we ought to have something open for just every realtor that can come in and take a basic land 101 class.
Yeah, it's available. So our accredited land consultant designation, you mentioned that we have 40,000 licensees in the state of Alabama. How many ALCs do you think we have? Just guess.
50.
40
40.
in the
Yeah.
whole state. So 1/10 of 1% of people have done it. You take the 6 classes, it's basically like having a master's degree in land. You have to sell $10 million worth of real estate to get it. So you've hit some milestones, but so we have a very small pool of people. Now there are a lot more people who are proficient in land brokers. It doesn't mean you're not proficient if you don't have the ALC, but if you do that, it means you have gone through the rigorous process of at least being able to say, I've done the coursework and displayed some production.
That's the issue. Either you become a master's level or there's nothing really for you. That's the reason I think we ought to open up some classes and allow people that are, particularly young people getting into the business, want to decide if they want to stay with residential, they want to go commercial, they maybe want to go land.
Yeah, and this is all voluntary.
yeah, it is. And so, we talked about a lot of the courses that offer that basically give you knowledge of land. We offer, also do so many things that we also get real estate credit for. We're talking about, a course just based on 1031 exchanges, courses that are based on mineral rights and, things like that, timber
Conservation
rights,
easement. Yeah.
conservation easements. So we do a lot. We try to offer education courses that, one, are relevant, but two, just help you broaden and understand. Understanding the land is one thing, but the whole process of, a land real estate transaction, there's like, as we've mentioned, there's a lot that goes into it.
Well, Chris Robert put a good point. So he said he did not know about this class. So where can someone go?
Well, to start with, you can go to the Realtor Land Institute, and it's RLI.com.
Okay.
Land.
RLI.
RLI land.
Yeah, RLIland.com.
Okay.
We do have social media, the national, they're an affiliate of National Association of Realtors. So there's a national level of Realtor Land Institute, and then different states have different chapters. I think our chapter has 40 something current active members in it.
Okay.
Fortunately, if you become a member of RLI, you don't have to do an individual membership to the state. You become a member of in Alabama automatically. Some of the courses we do can be fairly expensive, but there's a lot of them. We did one in February that we called it Landowners Program Day, and we had foresters from Alabama Forestry Commission come in, extension agents from the USDA, NRCS come in, and basically it was a full days long talking about programs that landowners can apply for and help, manage, improve, whatever it may be. But we thought it was beneficial to let land agents know about this and, when they're talking with landowners, things that are available for landowners.
So you all even specialize in talking about like CSP and CRP properties.
Mhm.
Okay.
See, I always thought you had to be part of a RLI to get into those classes. I didn't know they were open.
It's open to the public.
I
It's open to the public. Come on.
pay your money.
No, it is not a membership exclusive thing. We, last year, Brian Watts was the president with Southeastern Land Group, and he held a course in Auburn, and it was a subdivision development course. So a lot of times in some of these expanding cities, Huntsville, Auburn, Opelika, areas like that, Baldwin County, there's a lot of, what was once rural farmland is now becoming developed. And so that subdivision development course brought in a lot of residential agents. And we really tried to reach out to them because I think it's important for them to know when they do go sell a lot in a neighborhood or the house, where this whole process starts at. So, taking a raw piece of land, developing it, utilities, roads, curbs, gutters, the whole 9 yards to the finished product. That's what that course went through.
So with this company coming up in a CE year and stuff, this might be a good thing for y'all to make sure that people know to go to rliland.com and it has the courses and when they're going to be held.
That's
And
right.
you already planned out your 2026 year?
Not yet. We have not. So next week, our course is in Rogersville, Alabama, Joe Wheeler State Park Resort. That will be our final course for 2025.
Mhm.
And then we'll transition. Neil Colbert, who's in Fort Payne, Alabama, will become the president of the Alabama chapter. And we'll get a new committee board rolled on and they'll start planning for 2026.
All right.
And all these classes work as continuing ed electives for realtors?
Get them approved.
Yes, as we get them approved.
And we approve them as fast as possible.
That's awesome.
I would say this too, kind of putting a button around all of this. We run into, as land guys, rural guys, we run into a lot of residential people that kind of, Uncle John passed away and his wife wants her to sell this 300 acres and shorter. And, it's really hard to dabble in land, real estate. There are so many things that have got to be considered, that's got to be done from, do you know about pine beetles? Do you know what soil that a farmer is going to want? What about the easements that we've talked about and the conservation easements that are on it that don't allow you to do what you want to do with it? The restrictions that are there, so you can't divide it or whatever. And so it really, there's several things. It's the knowledge of the first area of understanding what you're selling or what you're listing or what you're trying to sell. The second thing is the equipment needed to sell that property. I have residential people that call me and say, I've got a buyer that wants to look at your 500 acres. And great. Go show it. Well, I don't have a side-by-side. And I know that it says you need a side-by-side to show it. Okay, so you want me to show it for you? And I even, about half the time they cancel on me. And so I'm showing their client and I do the whole process and then
They won't have the
they
commission.
won't have the commission. And, and so they're not equipped to be able to do what we do, both from a knowledge and an equipment standpoint. you know, I got a $45,000 side by side with air conditioning that's going to get everybody through there, and it feels good in the middle of summer or good in the middle of winter, and hopefully is in a buying mood. And then the next thing is that if you're a residential person that's going to list 500 acres and put it in MLS and put a sign up, it's going to go to Zillow, and that's it. And what we do, I spend $50,000 a year just on land.com, Land and Farm, and Land Watch. I spend probably another $30,000 or $40,000 a year and just in social media that's going to people that are in the land business. And so our marketing is going to be different than what a residential agent is going to have. And so even though they may have a great property, it may sit there in language for a long time because they don't have it in the right places. So I would encourage, it's difficult to dabble in real estate. If you've got a kind of a one-off thing that Uncle John does, then, you know, you're best to call one of these guys and refer it to them, because they are going to sell it at a higher price in a quicker amount of time, and they're going to keep you out of trouble.
I'll say, I can promise you that I do the same thing in return, because I referred a house this week
Yeah.
because it was like a 1970s home, and the buyer is going to need to know, you know, who knows? I don't even know anything about residential. So who needs, you know, what needs to be fixed? Foundation, mold, this, that, and the other. Hey, I'll refer that to somebody who's competent and knowledgeable about residential and, you know.
What we're all saying though is, you know, the consumer out there, they're the ones that we're supposed to be working for and representing.
Right.
So by doing what you were saying and doing what you were saying, it best represents
That's
that
right.
consumer out there. So we need to be
Well,
professional about that.
Caveat emptor state,
Yeah.
buyer beware.
It
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
it still is.
But you can
Well,
still
your
get
agent
food.
can help you do that.
But that's what we're for.
Mhm.
We're supposed to help these people through this process. It's complicated, you know.
Mhm.
You start getting into minerals and easements and conservation, it gets complicated. I
Mhm.
mean, I've seen sales contracts 30 and 40 pages thick, easy. You know, particularly when you get lawyers involved.
Well, before we run out of time, I would like to pivot a little bit. I know we've had some off conversations about AI and the inflection of AI into real estate transactions. Are you all seeing AI in land transactions?
I wouldn't necessarily say I've noticed it. These guys may have seen some, but you know, fraud and things like that, I definitely have seen some of fake listings and whatnot. But as far as AI, you know, I think you always be careful dealing with AI and make sure you double check anything you have it do.
We have two questions that we passed over. I think Jerry Joe has another comment. You may
Yeah,
have to
can y'all
unmute
hear
your-
me?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yes,
Can
sir.
you hear me? Okay.
We-
Hey, one thing I did want to mention, and this was a very, very tragic thing for our real estate company. We had one of our agents that passed away. We went to his funeral last week. 38 years old, died of a massive heart attack. On a hunting property is where he actually died, and they found him the next day. You know, we all list, you know, residential realtors. I know they have risk that they have meeting people at houses and, you know, could be in harm's way that way. You know, us in the land business, we're getting out, walking properties, we're getting out of an air conditioned truck, we're getting out in the woods and walking. You know, some people that we show land to may not be in very good shape, and they don't realize it until they get out in the middle of the woods in July and it's hot. You know, I would say as land professionals, we all need to take a course in CPR, learn that. They have some very affordable defibrillators now that you can carry in your truck. You know, you may save somebody's life. And Tom Leatherby was a great guy, 38 years old, left a daughter and a wife in this world. And who knows if he'd have been on a land showing and somebody there knew CPR, it may have saved his life. And so we do deal in dangers in land. I personally have been struck by a rattlesnake. Thank goodness it didn't go through my boot, but I got struck by a rattlesnake. And you're over a half a mile or a quarter mile away from your vehicle and you get bit by a snake, you're gonna have a hard time making it back. And a lot of times we're in rural areas and we don't even have cell coverage. So you need to have a backup plan, let people know where you're at. But all real estate has its challenges, but a lot of times we're in very rural areas, and so if nothing else, you get out of this call, learn how to do CPR if you don't. The American Red Cross and all that is great deals. And if you live around the Montgomery area, you can have a heart wellness check done at Baptist Hospital. Will do it for $199. They'll do a complete scan from your belly button to your Adam's apple. If you got any kind of coronary problems or anything like that, it'll show up. And so I strongly, if anybody listening out here doesn't get anything, go get the heart wellness check, learn how to do CPR, buy your defibrillator and learn how to use it and keep it in your truck. You may save somebody's life one day. I didn't mean to get off the real estate subject, but
No,
we're
sir.
all
No,
in
that's
the
okay.
people. We're all in the people business. So at the end
Yeah.
of the day,
Thank you, Mr. Engel.
That's good, Jerry Joe. One thing I would say, I've been struck by a snake, been in the quicksand, had things like that happen. And we had we had a CPR instructor come talk to our real estate company and kind of go through that with us. But one thing that Alpha has, the Farmers Federation, if you're a member, for $20 a month, you can get air and ground evac transportation for $20 a month. It's a member add-on. So they will, if you've got your phone and you're out there and something happens, they will come get you. So that's a good $20 a month. And like he was talking about, I have a Starlink mounted on the roof of my truck just because I'm in areas with no service. And if you need to get somebody, so you get, that's a big factor in rural Alabama for sure.
Mr. Fletcher, Majors?
Yes, you asked about AI, and
Yes, sir.
yesterday, National RLI had a webinar, and it was actually on social media and all, taught by a consultant or with land.com, and he spent a good bit of time talking about advertising and AI and how not to mislead the public. And I don't know if that's available for download from the National RLI now, but somebody sure try to find out about that. It was really good, and he was talking about how you need to, we're just starting to use AI, and it scares me to death because I've got agents that talk like me, and it sounds like somebody from I don't know where wrote their narratives or something. So you got to be careful with AI, but I do, no doubt about it, it's coming down the road. And just, check in with that RLIland.com and see what might be available there. But that was the best webinar. RLI, for their members, has free webinars, about an hour webinar, about three or four times a year about different subjects. And that was the best one I've seen. And it was all about marketing. I mean, we're all marketers, and like Dale said, we spend a lot of money doing marketing, but part of it is making sure what you're doing is factual. And I'm worried about people now. The first thing, one of the things you said, no matter what company you're with, AI will add the best company out there to when they describe the company. So just take that and the AI into context and check it. I mean, even sites. He was talking about AI would give you sites and it'd be wrong. And I still listen to some bar stuff, and I listened to a webinar from a bar. Remember about using AI to write briefs and how you better check them close. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you again. We have another question or comment from Sandra Brazelton. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Good morning. I'm Sandra Browston, real estate broker instructor in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm on site to register, and under company name, I put my company name, and it would not allow me to go through. It says search for the company name, but there was not a a drop down with my name. So how do I properly register my company for the event? Because tomorrow is the last day.
Let's see, there is,
Give her your cell number and y'all work.
yeah, if you would just reach out to me, I'll send you the link for registration. My cell phone number is 334-322-2683.
Let me
Welcome.
call back to you. 334. Go ahead.
322-2683.
Uh-huh. And your full name?
Hoke Smith.
Thank you so
HOKE.
I appreciate the information. We have a lot of air property in Alabama, and we're trying to protect that generational wealth.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Well, we're about out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any final remarks you guys have? I really have appreciated the information that we've shared. I think this is something that should be captured, archived, and shared statewide, and we'll do so on our YouTube channel. But any final remarks before we
I
end
would
here?
say thank you to you
Yes, sir.
to recognizing that this is a different category that does need some additional help, particularly from the CE standpoint. So
Yes,
thank you so much for
Yeah.
your,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, I was spurred to do it, so.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris.
I just asked.
One last question for Hope. Where do y'all share your classes that you're coming up with, like the Alabama Real Estate Association as well as with us?
Yeah, typically, if there's a course held in a specific location, we usually reach out to the local associations and try to help with some promotion there.
Mhm.
But we do have social media. We're on a Facebook page, Realtor Land Institute Alabama chapter has a page, as well as the national.
Okay,
And national also lists all of the courses that are being held throughout the country.
okay.
So not only do they promote, what's in Alabama, but
Mhm.
other courses that are being held throughout the country. So something may be in Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, that may be convenient for somebody like in Huntsville,
Right.
that, they could go across state lines.
Thank you.
Okay.
I want to add just one last thing. As the head of our company, I deal with real estate. I deal with 4 different real estate commissions. We are blessed. I don't want to name the other ones because I'll get audited this afternoon, but we are so blessed in Alabama. Y'all make it easy to do business. And it's done professionally and it's done well. So thank you for taking care of the agents in Alabama.
Thank you.
And if you're listening, the other states, we love y'all too. Alabama more.
Chris, any final remarks, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
Commissioner Belair?
This has been for me, it's very informational. I'm one of those residential real estate agents I keep referring to, but I think it's very important that we learn to refer to the people who know better what is to be done with land and timber and et cetera, versus trying to do it all, as we were talking about earlier. So thank y'all so much. This has been an eye opener. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we'll thank our audience for joining us today. We try to share as much information as possible. Again, we have a large licensee community that's expanding at a rate of about 8 new license applications per day. Every single day, we bring 8 more people into the real estate profession in the state of Alabama. So it's incumbent upon this agency to make certain that you all have the information and resources that you need to practice. We're a business-friendly real estate commission, and part of that is information sharing. So if there's anything else that you all want to hear or see discussed here, please let me know. We'll reconvene and get the information out. But I really sincerely appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you. Thank you.